Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to Responsive Web Design 2. This is lecture 3. So today we're going to be covering cascade, inheritance, and specificity. Right? So this is going to be more of a theory class, less of a hands-on class. But these are very important topics related to CSS. Okay? We'll have a participation exercise, Bad Piggies, which you'll get an opportunity to work on in class. Announcements. The sign-in sheet is being passed around, so check your name off. And the recordings from last week are available on the course website. So if you want to look at last week's recordings, they are available. Are there any questions before we get started with our lecture today? All right, if there's no other questions, let's go ahead and jump right into it. All right, so cascade, inheritance, and specificity. Okay, so first we're going to get started with a little test. What color will be hello world from this code? Red, right? It's not a trick question. It's red, right? Okay. What would be hello class with this code? Green. Right? Green. Why is it green? It overwrites, right? We know that when we apply additional styles after the latest one, the last one gets applied, right? That's cascade. Okay, that's what we refer to as cascade. So cascade is a method of determining how to combine properties when they're coming from different sources, right? One, or the most simple rule, is the last one gets applied, gets priority. Okay. This cascade is a fundamental part of CSS. It is so fundamental it's actually in its name, right? Cascading style sheets, right? Because we can add styles on top of each other. Okay, as we see in here. Okay, another test. What is the color now? Black. Everyone thinks it's black? It's red. Okay. Why is it red? Right. Because the H1 is inside of the header, it's going to inherit the styles from that. Okay? What about here? Black question mark. Okay? So, in this case, what we're doing is it's still going to inherit the style, but it might be inheriting it from whatever the browser sets as the default, right? Or the user. We're going to talk about that in a moment. All right, so inheritance. Inheritance is applying a parent style to the child, okay, to a child. Okay, so if we add a style to a parent, the children will inherit those styles. Now, this only applies to certain properties. Not all properties are inheritable. So it only occurs on certain properties. We can control inheritance. There are values that allow us to control it. The most common one is inherit. This just basically allows us to tell an element to inherit the parent's style. There's the initial property, which allows us to set its initial or default setting. We have unset, which kind of, again, resets it. And then there's also revert. This is a new one, and it only works in certain browsers, which allows you kind of overset. Again, these last three kind of all do essentially the same thing, okay? But they're just nice to be aware of them. Okay, when we're talking about inheritance, we also need to talk about origin. There's different places where CSS can come from, okay? And we're not talking about just different style sheets that we can append to our HTML. We're talking different origins, okay? So there are actually 3 different origins when it comes to CSS. The first one is the user agent. This is referred to as the browser. Okay, so the browser will have a set of default styles that every page will essentially come with. Okay, now each browser will have their own defaults. How many people use the reset or normalize CSS? Did you cover that? Something within web design? Okay, we use those to compensate for that difference in default among browsers, okay, among the user agent. There is the author CSS. This is you guys, okay? That's the developers. So the CSS we write is the author, okay? So that comes into play. And last, there is the user, okay? This is a very seldom used feature in browsers. The visitor or the user can override CSS by applying their own style sheet. Okay? Not many people use this. In fact, it's not even available anymore in Chrome. They've removed this. You can add an extension to get it back, but it's no longer by default allowing you to use it. Okay? But it's there. Okay? So the user and the user agent and the user style sheet provide a default style to the document. So they're applied first, and then the author is applied on top of that. So it can override both the user agent and the user. Now, with that said, if the important keyword is used, it goes in kind of a reverse order. Okay? So if important is set on the author, and important on the user can override it. And important on the user agent can override that. Okay? So the browser manufacturers could really control the styles of pages by doing it. I don't think they do, but they could. All right. What color? Red or green? Red or green? How many people think it's red? How many people think it's green? How many people think it's a different color? There's only like 3 people who are saying that. It's red. Okay, it's red. Because it's more specific. We'll talk about that in specificity. You're right, it's more specific. Okay? What about this one? It's green. Okay, it's green. Okay, so specificity. I love saying that. Specificity. Okay, so specificity, there we go. Specificity is how browsers determine style declarations are applied. Okay, which style declarations are applied. So the more specific a selector or a group of selectors are, will win out, regardless of order. Okay, the order doesn't matter here. So specificity is calculated by assigning heavier weight to those selectors with more specific nature. Okay, so a class is more specific than a tag name. An ID is more specific than a class. Okay, this kind of tells you why we lean towards using certain selectors over others. Where specificity is equal, the last declaration will be prioritized, okay? Just like normal cascading comes into play. All right, so type selectors and pseudo elements are the least specific. Okay, so type selectors, that's your tag names, okay? Your p tag, your h1, those are your type selectors. Pseudo elements are like the before pseudo element or the after pseudo element. Class selectors, attribute selectors, and pseudo classes are more specific. Okay, those are the next level up. Then we have our ID selectors. Okay, and lastly, we have inline style attribute inside your HTML. Those are even more specific, okay? And will override any of the others. Of course, if you use the important keyword, that takes priority over everything. That's why it's generally discouraged to use this keyword, unless it's absolutely necessary. All right, so there is a calculation, or there's a way of calculating specificity. Okay? Now, there are different levels inside of specificity. And don't think of this as the number 1 in a 10-based system. This is like that level 1. Okay? 1 in that level. Okay? So tag names, H1, P tag, A, get a 1 in the lowest level. Okay? Each one of those is 1. Okay? When you have your class, your attributes, or your pseudo classes, they are in the next level up. Okay? IDs come into the next level. Okay? Again, these are 1. And of course, your inline styles will get up into the last level. All right? So this is how we kind of calculate specificity. All right, so for example, this selector, where we have the ID header, h1.title or class title, it would have a specificity of 111. Okay, everyone see how that's calculated? They have 1 ID, 1 class, and 1 tag. Okay, we could have a selector like this. Okay, there are 2 IDs in this. We have an ID for header, an ID for title. We have 2 classes, the header class and the title class, and then we have the H1. So 221. Okay, what would be the specificity for this one? Two, right? 2. So 2 classes and 2 tags. How about this one? These are ridiculous. Don't write anything like that. Okay, so we have our 4 slots. The first one is 0 because we're not dealing with inline. What's our next slot over? How many IDs do we have? 2. We have 2 IDs. How many classes do we have? Okay, 2. And how many tags do we have? 2. What about that first child? Where does that go? Gets applied to a class. It's a pseudo class, right? So it gets applied to a class. So it's 2, 3, 2. Okay? One more. What about this one? Zero, 12. Okay? So this is not base 10. Okay? So once you hit 10, it doesn't go over to the next level. You just keep increasing at that level. You can't use multiple tag names to override a class. Okay? It's not possible. Okay, so keep that in mind with specificity. Okay. Yeah, first one is your inline styles on your attribute. So your style attribute inside the HTML. This is for ID. This is for classes and pseudo classes. And this is for type, tag names. Okay? This is mostly just a way to keep track of specificity when you have to override things. All right. Let's try this one again. What's the color? Red, right? We already seen this. What about this one? Green. Okay. They both have the same specificity. Doesn't matter the order, but they both have a class and they both have a tag name, so it's the same specificity, so the last one gets applied. Okay, what about this one? Right? Everyone sees that? It's green. Actually, that's not right. Sorry, this is not a bad. That's a Messed up on that one. Yeah, it should be red. You're right. Oh, no, wait. I'm sorry. Let's go back to that one. Got all confused. Come back. Okay, it's green. Why is this green? Why is this green? It's not priority, it's proximity. Okay, we didn't really talk about this. This is being applied to the header. This is being applied to the title. Okay? So because this is proximity is closer to what we're looking at, it takes precedence, even though it's higher specificity. So you do have to watch for that, okay, when you're dealing with CSS. All right, and this one should be green or red? Red? Green? It's red. Okay. Okay. That's it. Any questions about specificity? Cascade or inheritance? What is specificity used for? We have to keep track of our specificity because when we are trying to work with other style sheets than our own, or even our own style sheets, we're going to run into a problem. We may run into problems where we're trying to change a color or change a style to an element, and we can't because something has a higher specificity. Even if we're adding it down below, it still takes priority. Okay, that's where specificity comes into. The browser is determining that this has higher priority, and that's the style it's going to get into. You're going to run into this, and it's going to be really frustrating. It's like, why won't this turn red when I want it to? Well, are you checking the specificity? This comes into big play if you're working with somebody else's code, okay? If you've been asked to, oh, I need you to update this site, but you can't change the styles, you're just going to have to add your own styles. Horrible thing, but you're going to have to do it. If you ever go out there and work on this. In fact, I'm asking you to do it for this next assignment. Specificity is all about that, okay? You need to make sure that you have higher priority, that the styles you're adding has a higher priority than the ones that already exist, okay? Specificity, there are calculators, but just look at the code, okay? Just like what we did there, and I had you calculate it out. You looked at what the selector is to understand the specificity. Now, best practices state that we should use only classes and preferably one class to style our elements. Okay, that keeps the specificity down low and easy to read. Okay, and easy to overwrite. If we just have a class, we override it with another class. Okay. Now, in your Bad Piggies assignment, I didn't follow those rules because I'm being mean, and you're gonna have to do some extra to do that. Okay. But we'll do that now. But are there any other questions before I talk about Bad Piggies? All right, so Bad Piggies, this is your participation exercise for today. You'll have the remaining time in class to work on it. This is a CodePen assignment. So there's a link to a CodePen. You'll do everything on CodePen. So you want to make sure that you are logged in and that you fork it. If you try and do all the editing without being logged in and you try and submit the URL, it won't do anything. The changes won't be saved and you'll just lose all your work. Okay, so you want to make sure you're logged in. You want to make sure you fork it. That way it's on your account and you can save it. Very important. All right, so your objective for this is to use the lowest specificity possible to change the background color of each piggy. Okay, all the piggies were bad and they made themselves all red. We don't like that. So you gotta make the change of the piggies. Now, the styles that you're going to be adding to your CodePen are coming before the styles that make the piggies red. Okay, so you cannot rely on cascading to help you. You must create a style or a selector that has higher specificity. Okay, you cannot change the HTML. right? So once you've got all your piggies in the correct colors, you will submit the URL to your pin to Brightspace. And this is due tonight. Okay, should not take you very long. Any questions about the assignment? Let me show you what it looks like. Okay, so if we go out to the course website, this is MDAC, by the way. Go out to the course website. That's mdac.github.io/MTM6201-W20. And we'll go to the content page, and we'll go to week 2. That's what we're covering. So here is the content page. The topics, cascade and inheritance, specificity is in there as well. So you can take a look at that. Then we have our assignments this week. So Bad Piggies is what we're going to look at here in a moment. Page redesign we'll talk about on Thursday. That's your first exercise. Slides are available there. Okay, so Bad Piggies. This gives you the introduction and objective. Again, this is a CodePen assignment. So here's the link to the CodePen pen. All right, so this is what it looks like right here. So you can change your view. I just want to point this out. Not everyone's aware of this. Inside of CodePen, you can change your view. If you don't like where your content is, you can move it over to the other side, or you can move it to the top. You can also change the theme of your CodePen as well. All right. So all the piggies are red. Your objective is to use CSS by typing it into the CSS block to make them the following color. So pig 1 should be blue, pig 2 should be green, and so forth. Down below, I provide you the specificity of each of the pigs. And I give you an example of what pig 1 should be. So if we were to take this and we put it into our CSS, paste it in there. There we go. Wait for it to refresh. And now my first pig is blue. Okay. That's the assignment. Okay. Again, you have the remaining time in class to work on that. Okay. Which is over an hour. Should not take you that long. Any questions? All right. Before I let you go, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. All right, so for next time, we are going to be going over assignment expectations. So you're going to be receiving your first exercise on Thursday. So I'm going to spend some time explaining what I'm going to be expecting for your assignments, specifically your exercises and midterm and final. Okay. What do I mean by responsive design? What am I going to be looking for? What do I mean by good design? What do I mean by providing well-formatted code and so forth? Okay, so I'm going to go into detail what I'll be expecting. Then I'll go through and explain the page redesign assignment and what you'll need to do for that. And then you'll have the remaining time in class to work on that exercise. That's what we'll be learning on Thursday. Any final questions before I let you go to work?